Part 7. When Ruthless Mafia King is forced to marry you. The sleek black car pulled up to the gates of Lucian's mansion, its towering walls and dimly lit surrounding, casting an ominous aura. Vine shifted uncomfortably in her seats as Jungkook's cold eye scans the perimeter, catching sights of guards stationed at every corner. Hidden in the shadows, Jimin, along with his men, absorbed the scene with a sharp precision, ready to intervene at the slightest hint of danger. Jungkook's stance was alert, his sharp instincts on edge. If anything feels off, signal me immediately. Jimin had whispered through the earpiece, his voice framed with command. Jungkook gave him a curt nod before stepping forward with Bain by his side. As they entered the residence, the guards stationed at the door led them to the living room, gesturing for them to wait. Please stay here, I will inform Mr. Lukin of your arrival. The room was everything Wine had feared, a suffocating combination of dark interiors and an overwhelming presence of men armed to the teeth. She gloved her eyes, darting around nervously, trying to process the weight of her surrounding. It was her first time being in such a heavily guarded environment. Her fingers subconsciously started rubbing together as a copying machine. Jungkook, seated beside her, noticed her anxious behavior. His gaze lingered on her trembling hand for a moment before he spoke in a low, cold tone. Stop that, he said, his voice devoid of warmth but oddly reassuring. Nothing will happen. Startled by his word, Vine looked up to him, her eyes wide. Despite the harshness of his tone, the stubborn reassurance behind it gave her a sliver of relief. She bit her lip and nodded, silently grateful for his presence, even if his words lacked at any overt of display of care. Moments later, the sounds of footsteps broke the silence. Lucian entered the room, his presence commanding yet unsettling. He was dressed sharply, his expression unreadable as he extended a hand toward Jungkook. Welcome. Jungkook stood, shaking his hand with a firm grip. Lucian then turned to Wine, offering his hand with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. She hesitated, her gaze shifting nervously to Jungkook, silently seeking guidance. The barely perceptible nod from him, she reached out and shook Lucian's hand, forcing a polite smile. Hello, she said softly. Lucian's sharp eyes studied her for a moment before he shifted his attention back to Jungkook. Come, let's have dinner. We can talk there. The dining room was extravagant with a long table laden with a variety of dishes that looked both luxurious and intimidating. Lucian took his seat at the head of the table, gesturing for Jungkook and Wine to join him. The guards stationed around the room didn't go unnoticed by either of them. As the meal was served, Lucian began eating without hesitation. Wine stole a glance at Jungkook, who remained still, his fork untouched. Lucian suppressed a chuckle, realizing his reluctance to trust the food. He leaned back in his chair, speaking in an almost amused tone. Relax, Jungkook. As you can see, I am perfectly fine. No poison, I promise. Jungkook shot him a brief glance, his expression unreadable, before finally picking up his fork. He took a bite, his movements deliberate and calculated. Wine, sensing the tension easing slightly, began to eat as well. As the meal continued, Lucian's attention shifted to Wine. So, Wine, how are you finding married life? I have heard congratulations are in order. Wine stiffened, her grip on the fork tightening. It's good, she replied hesitantly, avoiding any mention of the complexities in her relationship with Jungkook. Lucian's gaze lingered on her as if trying to read between the lines before he turned to Jungkook. Marriage is a tricky thing, isn't it? Balancing personal and professional life. loyalty, and ambition. But as you know, Jungkook, everything in his life has a price. You can't have one without sacrificing the other. Jungkook's jaw tightened and Lucian pointed her, his cold exterior giving nothing away. He leaned back in his chair, his piercing gaze looking with Lucian's, as though silently daring him to elaborate. The tension in the room was palpable, each word laden with the hidden meaning. Wyan sat quietly, feeling the weight of the unspoken battle between the two men, while Jungkook's icy demeanor masked the storm brewing inside him. Lucian's smirk widened as he picked up his glass of wine, swirling it slowly. The question is, Jungkook, what are you willing to pay for what you truly want? The room fell silent, the atmosphere thick with anticipation. Jungkook didn't respond, but the flicker in his eyes was enough to send a chill down Ryan's spine. She knew this was the only beginning. The tension in the room was palpable, the weight of power and ego thickening the atmosphere. Jungkook sat frigid, his dark eyes narrowed at Lucky. What do you mean? Jungkook asked while closing his eyes as if trying to control himself. Lucian leaned back in his chair with an infuriating smirk. The clinking of the fork between Lucian's fingers echoed in the silence, his gaze tauntingly fixated on Jungkook as if daring him to lose control. Lucian broke the silence, his tone light yet laced with mockery. I must say, Jungkook, I thought you would be smarter than this. Or do I really need to spell it out for you? Jungkook's jaw tightened, his teeth grinning audibly as he growled, stop beating around the bush and get to the point. What do you want? Lucian's smirk widened, his eyes glinting with amusement. He set the fork down with a deliberate clink and leaned forward, resting his elbow on the table. Ah, the mafia world has such simple rules, doesn't it? If you want something, you have to give something in return. Surely I don't have to remind it to you. Audacity in Lucian's tone made Jungkook's blood boil. His fist clenched on the table, the veins on his arms slugging as he snarled. Enough games, Lucian, speak clearly. Lucian leaned back once more, his smirk fading into a serious expression, his voice lowered, becoming grave and direct. Very well, Jungkook, if you want my alliance, if you want this deal to go through, then I want something in return. What about your wife, John? The words hit Jungkook like a blow. He froze, his dark eyes flashing with disbelief before they hardened into sheer fury. Slowly he rose to his feet, his palms smashing against the table with such force that the plates rattled, a glass tipping over and spilling wine like across the pristine white tablecloth. What did you just say? Jungkook hissed, his voice low and deadly, the kind that could even make the bravest man tremble. Wine, on the other hand, has been terrified, everything happening around him. She just want to get out of this place, know what? Lucian remained unmoved, his expression calm, almost bored. Oh come on Jungkook, don't act so surprised. Everyone knows you don't love her. You barely acknowledge her existence. She is just a piece in your game, isn't she? So why not to hand her over? A simple transaction. Jungkook's vision blurred with rage. The very suggestion was a blow to his pride, an insult that cut deeper than any wound. He didn't know why it enraged him so much, but the thought of anyone else laying claim to his wife ignited a possessiveness he couldn't ignore. She is my wife, Jungkook growled, his voice trembling with suppressed rage, and no one can touch what's mine. Lucian chuckled, a dark, mocking sound. Your wife? Please, Jungkook, don't pretend to care. You have treated her like she is nothing, so why all this drama now? He tilted his head, his tone shifting to one of the curiosity mixed with cruelty. Unless there's something more, something even you don't realize. The taunt was too much. Jungkook's hand shot and pull it out in a fluid motion and aiming it directly at Lucane's head. The guard around the room reacted instantly. Vine gasped, her hands flying to her mouth as terror overtook her. She was trembling, her breaths coming in a short, panic gasp. The sight of so many, the suffocating tension, it was too much. She closed her eyes tightly, her hands moving closer to her ears, trying to block out the chaos. Lucane, however, didn't flinch. He merely chuckled again, the sound of infuriatingly calm. This is how you negotiate, Jungkook? By threatening? Jungkook's finger tightened on his voice dangerously low. Do you think I can't protect what's mine? Do you think I'll let a worm like you to take anything away from me? I don't need your alliance, Lucane. Remember who you are talking to. Lucane smirked. Oh, I remember. But let me remind you, Jungkook. Your wife isn't a possession, and if you really don't care about her, why does it bother you so much? Perhaps you are more attached than you would like to admit. Jungkook waved, the words hitting like a nerve he didn't want to acknowledge. He knew he didn't love her, or at least that's what he told himself, but the thought of handing her over to Lucane, it was unthinkable. Lowering with a sharp exhale, Jungkook straightened, his cold, commanding demeanor returning. Be thankful I am here on your turf, Lucane. If we were anywhere else, you did be by now. He turned sharply, grabbing Swine's arm, not harshly but firmly, protectively. She flinched at his touch, her trembling hands slowly lowering from her ears. He guided her toward the exit, her body still shaking, her wide eyes filled with fear. And with that, he led Vian out, his grip on her arms firm and reassuring. She didn't look back, too overwhelmed by fear and confusion. Jungkook's mind, however, was racing, his anger shimmering beneath the surface. As they reached the door, Lucane slowly clapped, broking the silence, startling both Jungkook and Vian. Jungkook turned sharply, his brow frowning in confusion. Lucane stood with a slight smirk, his hands still mid-clap. You have passed the test, he said. Jungkook's eyes narrowed, his voice sharp. Test? What are you talking about? Lucane stepped forward, his tone calm but firm. It wasn't just a dinner, Jungkook, it was a test, one you didn't even know you were taking. Jungkook said nothing, his cold gaze fixed on Lucane, waiting for him to explain. Lucane continued, his smirk fading. I don't work with just anyone. I have seen too many men in this mafia world who would sacrifice everything, their wives, their children, even their souls for power. I had to know if you were the same. Jungkook's jaw tightened, his voice low. And you thought I did fail? Lucane shook his head, stepping closer. I had my doubts. The rumor didn't help. They said you married Vian for power, not love. That you didn't respect her. That she's just a pawn for you. Jungkook's fist clenched, but he stayed silent, his expression unreadable. I wanted to see for myself, so I arranged that dinner. I watched how you behaved and how you spoke, how you acted when no one else was paying attention. Lucane gestured with his hand as if dismissing the air. And what I saw impressed me. You are not like others, Jungkook. You value your family, you prioritize your wife. You have not shown it openly, but your actions spoke louder than words. Jungkook's cold voice cut through the air. So what your plan was? To play games and judge me without my knowledge? Lucane made Jungkook's gaze without flinching. It wasn't a game, it was necessary. In this world, trust is everything, and now I trust you. Lucane paused, then turned to Vian, who stood quietly, her eyes wide with curiosity. And as for her, she is a rare gem. Jungkook, kind-hearted, honest, and loyal. I can see why you love her, and for what it's worth. Those rumors, they are nothing but lies. Wine bros frowned as her gaze shifted between Lucian and Jungkook. Her heart pounded in unease. How? She stammered, her voice trembling. How do you know so much about me? Lucain leaned back with a sly smile. I know everything, Mrs. John, or should I say, Kim Wyan, daughter of Mr. Kim and heir of Kim Enterprise. Now the treasured daughter-in-law of John family. Her eyes widened in shock, unable to recall ever meeting him. Yet his words carried unsettling familiarity. Jungkook's jaw tightened as he stepped forward, his voice low and sharp. Are you stalking my wife? How do you know all this? Lucain chuckled dismissively. Relax, John. I'm no stalker. I was merely verifying rumors, and I must say, reality exceeds them. She is truly a rare gem. Lucane's expression turned cryptic. There's something who know you better than me. You will meet them soon. Vine froze, her chest tightening while Jungkook's suspicion deepened. What are you talking about? He demanded. Kane nodded to his guard. Bring him. As the guard left, Vine whispered anxiously. What's going on? Who could he be? I don't know, Jungkook muttered, standing protectively close. Minutes dragged like hours until they heard footsteps coming toward them. Jungkook stood protectively near Vine, his sharp gaze never leaving Lucain, who seemed unfazed by the growing tension. Finally, the door creaked open and the guard returned, stepping aside to let another figure enter. Nuna, a familiar voice called out, Vine's eyes lighting up as a small figure came running toward her. They, she exclaimed, kneeling just in time to catch the 5-year-old boy in a warm hug. Thea's face lit up with joy. I miss you so much, Nuna. I told Papa to about you. You know, today is my birthday, Nuna, and Papa promised me that you will come. Thank you, Papa. I love you, he said as he hugged Lucain. The revelation hit Jungkook like a thunderbolt. Your son, he repeated, his voice tinged with disbelief. Lucain, you have a son? Lucain chuckled, an assumed glint in his eyes. Surprised Sean, of course you are. No one in this mafia will know this. Not about him, not even about my family. I prefer it that way. Jungkook stood silently watching the emotional reunion. Though his expression remained stoic, there was a flicker of understanding in his eyes. Now he knew that there was the reason Lucain had invited them. Lucain approached with a faint smile. It seems my son couldn't stop talking about you, Miss Ryan. You saved him, and for that I owe you my gratitude. Ryan, still holding Tay's hand, stood and smiled shyly. I didn't do anything special. I'm just glad he's safe. They tugged at her hand, his excitement bubbling over. Nuna, come, I want to show you the cake. Before Vine could respond, they grabbed her hand with one of his and Lucain's arm with the other, pulling them toward garden center. Vine glanced back at Jungkook, signaling him to follow, but Tae's enthusiasm didn't give her a chance to say anything. Jungkook's irritation flared as he watched them disappear. His jaw tightened and he muttered under his breath, Great, first this guy knew too much about my wife and now his son is stealing her attention. In the garden, a small cake sat on the table surrounded by elegant yet simple decoration. The intimate setting made it clear that this celebration wasn't meant for many eyes. They insisted on cutting the cake with wine, his excitement contagious. Even Jungkook couldn't help but watch as the two of them laughed and shared a slice. Once the celebration settled, they turned to wine again. Nuna, come see my room, he said, tugging at her hand. Without waiting for her answer, he dragged her off toward the house. Now left alone with Lucain, Jungkook grabbed a glass of wine from a nearby server. He sipped it slowly, studying Lucain's, who had also taken a glass and approached him. Breaking the silence, Jungkook raised an eyebrow. I didn't see Tae's mother here. Is she busy or Lucane's body tensed slightly, his usual calm exterior cracking just for a moment. She is no longer with us, he said flatly, his voice void of emotion. Jungkook noticed the stiffness in his tone but didn't press further. If it's a sensitive topic, forget I asked, he said, taking another sip. Lucane exhaled, his gaze fixed it on the distance horizon. Their mother was the only person I ever trusted completely. Losing her was inevitable in our world. Cook nodded slightly, sensing the weight of those words. I see. Lucane turned to face him, his expression unreadable. You are the first outsider to know about Taejeon. That should tell that how much I value what Vine did for him. Jungkook didn't respond, his mind processing the layers of secrecy surrounded Lucane and his family. So even someone like Lucane has weaknesses, he thought, watching as the man donned the rest of his drink. They were talking about some business stuff when Jungkook got a call from his father. He accused himself picking up the call. Soon after, he came back and said in a calm voice, I am really grateful that you invited us here, but now we have to leave. There's an emergency and my father needs me. Lucane nodded slightly as he understood what Jungkook wanted to say. Sure, you can leave and thank you so much for coming. Then he told one of his guards to inform Vine about this as both of them moved inside the mansion. In Tae's room, Vine sat cross-legged on the floor as Tae showed her his favorite toys one by one, his face glowing with excitement. And this one, Luna, this is my report. It can move and talk, he said, demonstrating its function with great enthusiasm. Vine laughed softly. Wow, Tay, you have so many amazing things. I am jealous. Tay giggled. When you visit me next time, I'll let you play with all of them. Just then, the guard entered. Miss Vine, he said politely. Mr. Jungkook asked me to inform you that it's time to leave. He is waiting for you downstairs. Maya's smile fluttered for a moment. She didn't want to leave, not when Thais looked so happy. Oh, she said softly. Thais' face dropped immediately. You are leaving, Luna? No, you can't go. Thay, it's late, Vine said gently, reaching out to ruffle his hair. I really have to go. But it's my birthday, Tay said, his voice rising. You can't leave on my birthday. Tay, she Vine sighed, feeling torn. The little boy's eyes filled with determination. If you won't stay, I'll tell Papa. He'll make you stay. Without waiting for a reply, he dashed out of the room. Hey, wait, Vine called, standing up and hurrying after him. Downstairs, Jungkook was waiting near the entrance when they ran into the room, heading straight for Lucaine. Papa, tell Luna to stay. She can't leave. Please, Papa, it's my birthday. Lucaine sighed heavily, trying to reason with the child. They have to leave. It's late and they have work tomorrow. No, they shouted, his voice trembling. I want Nuna to stay. Please, Papa, just for tonight, please. At that moment, Vine appeared looking fluttered. She started, but the boy cut her off. Nuna, please, just tonight, please stay. Thay's eyes were wide, pleading desperately. Lucane looked at the scene, his son's tearful face and Vine's conflicting expression. Finally, he sighed and turned to Jungkook. Jungkook, would it be possible for both of you to stay just for tonight? You can leave early tomorrow morning. Jungkook frowned, clearly irritated. We have a lot to please, Lucane added, his tone soft but firm. Jungkook glanced at Vine, who looked up at him with a hope in her eyes. After a tense pause, he exhaled sharply. Fine, just for tonight. Tae's face lifted up and he threw his arms around Vine. Thank you, Nuna. Thank you, thank you. Lucane nodded in approval. Good, I'll have the rooms prepared for both of you. Time skip. Jungkook froze as he stepped into the room, his gaze landing on the single neatly made bed in the center. His thought churned. One bed, no coach, no escape. He ran a hand through his head, frustration evident. The idea of sharing a bed with wine was uncharted territory. Lost in thoughts, he didn't hear Vine enter the room until her soft voice broke through his reverie. Jungkook, she called hesitantly, a small, grateful smile on her lips. He turned sharply, meeting her hesitant gaze. She stood by the door, nervously clutching her dress. Despite the tension, a small, sincere smile touched her lips. "Thank you for letting us stay," she murmured. Her voice was soft, sincere, and it pulled Jungkook out of his thoughts. He blinked monetarily, taken aback. "It's nothing," he muttered, turning his gaze back to the bed. Vine followed his line of sight and immediately noticed the problem. There was only one bed. A wave of awkwardness swept over her as she realized what it meant. She bit her lips nervously, glancing at Jungkook, who seemed equally uncomfortable. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence was heavy, filled with unspoken tension. Finally, Vine broke it. "I can sleep on the floor," she offered quickly, trying to ease the tension. "I don't mind." "You are not sleeping on the floor," Jungkook interrupted firmly, his tone leaving no room for argument. "But I said no," he snapped, his irritation apparent. Then, more quietly, he added, "We'll figure it out." The tension hung in the air as he moved toward the window, arms crossed, while Vine hesitantly perched on the bedside. A sudden knock broke the silence. "I'll check," Jungkook said, motioning for her to stay put. Opening the door, he found Tae standing there, clutching his stuffed toy. "Tae," Jungkook frowned. The little boy darted under his arm, running straight to Vine, climbing onto the bed. He hugged his toy tightly. "Nuna, I want to sleep with you tonight," they declared with a bright grin. Vine blinked, caught between surprise and amusement. "They, you should." "It's my birthday," they interrupting, clutching her arm. "Please, Nuna." Jungkook sighed heavily. "They, you can't just." "I'll sleep in the middle," they announced, ignoring him completely. Vine chuckled, gently patting Tae's head. Jungkook jaw tightened, but seeing Tae's stubborn determination, he relented with a resigned whine. Tae beamed, pulling Vine down beside him. "Good night, Nuna." "Good night, Tae," she whispered, brushing his hair. Jungkook sat on the other side of bed, glancing at the scene with mixed emotion. Tae contentment, Vine's gentleness, it stirred something unfamiliar inside him. As Vine hummed softly to help Tae drift off, Jungkook laid down his back to them. Despite his irritation, the sound of their quiet exchange brought an odd sense of warmth. "Thank you," Vine whispered again, her voice almost lost in the stillness. Jungkook didn't respond, but the silence between them felt less suffocating than before. For the first time, he thought maybe this wasn't so unbearable after all. Spoiler, with a small, almost mischievous smile, he leaned back and said with a quiet intensity, "She's the one. I don't care what it takes. I'll make her mine, no matter what." Like, share, subscribe my channel. Thanks for watching.